We've all heard of the infamous Ouija board, and most of us would have stumbled across one in the games aisle when doing some shopping. Well, it seems like an innocently packaged game, it sparked controversy and has a really bad reputation. Why is that? Well, the board game allows you to contact unforeseeable forces, with many tales of misfortune happening to people after playing the Ouija board, like injuries, death, or even violent hauntings and possessions. It's no wonder why many people say to never own an Ouija board, or to even think to play it, as it is not a game. So in today's video, we're going to focus on the most famous creepypasta among the Ouija board, and one that has sparked attention online over the last few decades, but has actually been around for centuries, and that is the demonic interactions that disguise themselves while you communicate with the other side. Now, I'm not even going to speak of the name of the demon/entity we are referring today, as it is believed that gives them power. And that is not what this video is for. Yes, it's for entertainment purposes, but also to kind of like educate us, or at least be aware of the dangers of using an Ouija board. Now on screen, you're going to see a list of names that this entity can manifest through or present itself with, so it's kind of scary because it uses more than one name, so please be aware of that. They're going to be on the screen. Again, I'm not going to be saying any of these names in this video, I just refuse to. So if you are planning to run your own Ouija board sessions, just be mindful of that. It's even believed that just saying the name of the entity is enough to potentially summon it into your life without even knowing until it's too late. So let's now get into the context of this. So according to Villians Wiki, this entity is a fallen angel that was banished from heaven by God. He's rumoured to have been the same demon who possessed Roland Doe in the late 1940s when the boy used an Ouija board. Several exorcisms were performed by priests, and the possession were written about in a book called The Exorcist under the name. Again, we will not be saying those names. So the entity we are referring to today is primarily known to manifest itself through an Ouija board, and although we can't prove it, is believed to have been the same entity inspired for the movie The Exorcist, as well as the Enfield hauntings in England. Now these are some of the most extreme paranormal cases, so if the same entity is linked in all of these cases, you can imagine the severity of actually accidentally summoning this thing into your lives. So again, that is something to keep in mind. Now you could accidentally manifest this into your life without even knowing, and an example for this is using supernatural tools like the Ouija board. Most commonly for this case anyway, you might be wanting to contact a relative that has sadly passed away, and you might get a response and you might think it is a relative when it really isn't, and it's just a negative energy mimicking that, gaining your trust. Also, I forgot to minimize my camera again. I'm not re-recording, we're just gonna go with it. But also it's said that many people have been contacted by this exact entity, with reports of similar behaviours happening, which we will get onto soon. However, there is one story in particular that actually got this topic going in the first place. The internet is the main reason this centuries-old legend is famously known today. So the true origin of this story is filled with superstition, fabrication, and giant gaps in timeline, and since 2009, the internet made this case famous, starting with a user known as Darren Evans, who publicly and exclusively talked about this entity on March 24th, 2009, still up online to read today on True Ghost Tales. He was 40 at the time of writing this, and was from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So this manuscript, as I'm calling it anyway, was almost No, it was over 20 years ago. So this man is well into his 60s now. So here are some things that we do know about Darren Evans. He has had continuous contact with this entity since 1982. That was before the internet even existed. And this all began when he found an Ouija board in his girlfriend's basement, and it allegedly had the entity's name on the back or the front of the board. There's been a couple of interviews with Darren where he said it was in different places, so I can't really confirm which one is true. I've just read these on articles as well, keep in mind, so I don't really know. But one thing that I do know, Darren has openly admitted in his own writing that he's been interested in occult topics since a very young age, and has been using several Ouija boards in several different states and locations while having the same entity contact him effortlessly. So now we're going to go over what some of those experiences were in Darren's own manuscript. Again, you can read this online. I'm only going to be reading chunks. There is so much to unpack from this manuscript. It sent shivers down my spine. It was unnerving, unsettling to say the least, and you're going to see why now. So Darren says the main reason for his manuscript as a whole is to warn people from what he has experienced, and that the Parker brothers, most famously known as their Monopoly board game, don't care about people's safety when they release the Ouija board game in their brand. So Darren said, during my experience with Ouija boards, one particular spirit always seemed compelled to make its presence known. Its name is... Today I refuse to even pronounce its name, as I believe the mere pronunciation of it can cause it to manifest itself. Too many times to count, it has at first pretended to be a nice spirit, or pretend to be whomever I was trying to contact, but eventually it showed its true self, cussing me, threatening me, and others present in the room. Once it actually cussed me using what looked like Latin or Hebrew and used biblical terminology. I was genuinely fascinated and startled by how many times this entity showed up, even in many different states and many different Ouija boards. It always wound up being very nasty and commented freely about how it wanted to possess my girlfriend and take them to paradise. Upon further communication, Darren found out that paradise spelled out hell. One time, the entity was being extremely evil. I walked into my bathroom only to see my 1-year-old daughter about to drown. Her mother had left her alone in the tub just for a second, and somehow the water got turned on and it was overflowing. The next day she was hospitalized for some weird internal infection and was put in isolation for 14 days straight as doctors tried to diagnose the illness. We almost lost her, and that was when I began to suspect demonic attack. The same time, my girlfriend maintained a trance-like state. Her personality changed from a very sweet person to withdrawn and uncaring. The entity said before this that it was going to possess her and eat her soul. One night in our bedroom, a vicious laughter emanated from thin air, and to this day, I cannot explain the terror in that laughter. One night, I was awakened by what felt like hands on my throat choking me. I could not breathe. I could not scream. After 30 seconds, it released its grip, and I gasped for air. The same thing happened to my girlfriend the next night. The list goes on and on and on. Eventually, Darren's girlfriend breaks up with him, and he goes on to find a new girl online in Michigan, where this woman is actually a skeptic. As though Darren had such a strong attachment using the Ouija boards, he still used them with his new girlfriend. Just to break away from his own kind of writing, he's been very honest in his manuscript. These are all things he's openly said, but it just absolutely sends chills down to my spine. All of these experiences were happening, people were getting hospitalized. My eyes are even watering talking about this. But all of these bad things were happening, and they still continued to use the Ouija board. And I don't know if it's because the entity had such a strong hold of him that he just couldn't help but have to use the Ouija board still. I don't know. But it's just really alarming to me, that terrifying. Darren goes on to continue to say he wanted to make his new girlfriend a believer. She lived in a small town and nobody sold a Ouija board, so he downloaded an app on his phone. Again, the same entity returned onto his phone this time. Present was his girlfriend's 7-year-old niece, son, and their friends. The kids' friends, to make that clear. And that is just another thing that horrifies me. They're messing with this stuff around children and young people. After this session on the phone, the girlfriend had become so intrigued that she drove 40 miles the next day to get her very own glow-in-the-dark Ouija board. The reason why it was glow-in-the-dark was because they had a snowstorm at the time. That's what Darren said. Maybe that caused something like with the lighting to go all funny or something. But they continued to have open sessions with the same entity and things only escalated. Even without Darren in the room, it would still communicate to his girlfriend. And his nieces also getting involved. Keeping in mind they are 7 years old at the time. Darren used to test the Ouija board's knowledge with the participants in the room. Without them seeing, Darren would write notes on a piece of paper in a specific colour of pen, and he would get them to ask the Ouija board, and every single time the board seemed to know the answers. They even tested it with shapes, and again, it's like the board knew everything. So it appeared to become an obsession. Having regular sessions, they'd even asked the entity to show itself, and it did on one of their photos. According to Darren, it manifested with at least 4 evil faces. Now, I couldn't really find this image online, but some articles say that the image was stolen from Darren and other people were re-uploading it, claiming it was their photo. Again, I've not seen the photos online anywhere, not even on some of the most popular pages, or even Darren's personal website, which we're going to get onto a bit later on as well. So Darren also searched for the name of the entity and was able to find multiple stories of people having the same or similar experiences. However, updated news articles are unable to find any of these stories that Darren was talking about, and I haven't personally seen anybody really talking about it. It's as though Darren was the first person to openly talk about this entity, or people have just deleted their stories. But in modern day, it's openly seen on the internet that people are some people on YouTube are trying to stupidly contact this entity, but there's more stories now online. I'm sure if you'll search on YouTube there'll be things, but we're talking about, around the 2009 period now, not 2023. So towards the end of Darren's manuscript, he said, "Heed my warnings, people. If you're playing around with a Ouija board and you jokingly ask if it has a name and it spells out any of those names are put on the screen anyway, close the session properly, cleanse the house, never, I repeat never, ask it again. And if you are brave enough to carry on conversations with the spirit, do not antagonize it or act on its direction. I know what I have seen, and I know other people have also come into contact with this spirit. It's dangerous beyond words. I realize not every session results in negativity, but when you play with this entity, you are playing with fire." Honestly, I just have continuous chills reading all of this. I want to quickly just go over a website really quickly, just to get a little bit more information about this entity and what can actually happen and the power it can actually have if it somehow enters your life. Okay, so this is the website Villians Wiki. I found it quite reliable in the past. As you know, my research is very extensive. I will read multiple articles and I will fact check everything. I haven't really been able to fact check so much with this topic, but because I've used this site before, I kind of trust it more. So you can see full name here, allies, the Ouija board demon, demon of the Ouija board, and all of these other names. I don't want to say them, to be very honest with you. So origin is folklore, occupation, deceptive demon, powers and skills, possession is the most common power, immunity and brute strength, hobby, driving his victims insane before killing them, goals, kill whoever summons him, crimes, malefic dark magic, possession, mass murder, type of villain, demonic possessor. So just from reading that profile of the entity, it's safe to say, just don't mess with it. And to be safe, if you ever get any of these names, close the session. I personally won't be messing with any of these Ouija boards, but please tell me like what you think about it in the comments. And as I mentioned earlier, Darren does have a website, and he has encouraged people, anybody that has similar stories, to publish on his website. So there are loads of stories online. I might do a part 2 and we might read over some of the stories. I'm not really sure yet. Just the energy in general of looking over this is really, really dark. And it's not something I particularly want to mess with. I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. So I've done like a white light protection meditation before recording this video. Anybody that is watching as well, you are definitely protected. We are all above these entities levels, and there's going to be no harm's way. Of course, you can't guarantee that. If you're messing with Ouija boards and spiritual games, you are basically breaking your protection playing those games, but we're just discussing it. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm really paranoid, but if you guys are researching these things at night time as well and hearing all these horrific facts, it just kind of sit on your skin a little bit. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.